All right. So, as the Israeli military is continuing to rain down American made bombs on the heads of Palestinian children in Gaza, the U.S. House of Representatives is deciding that now it's a good time to pass a resolution through the House, conflating the idea that anti Zionism is anti Semitism. Okay? If you have a critique of the state of Israel, of the government of Israel, then you must hate all Jewish people. Okay? So let's see what they got to say here from The Nation. Chris Lehman. They say, the House of Representatives seemed to achieve its summit of cynical grandstanding today with a debate over a resolution proclaiming that anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. That measure is not only a kind of photographic negative of the 1975 UN resolution condemning Zionism as racism, which was revoked in 2019, it also is founded on the anti-Semitic equation of Zionist sentiment with Jewish identity, even though many Orthodox Jews and secular dissenters remain opposed to Zionism. The New York Democratic Representative Jerry Nadler raised that crucial objection, among others, in an impassioned dissent to the resolution, but the measure will likely be endorsed by a majority vote this week, which it was, not least because its language leaves ample room for anyone voting no to be branded as an anti-Semite, and sure enough, the resolution passed by a resounding 311 to 14 margin, with 92 representatives taking the coward's way out and voting present on this resolution. So, first off here, Zionism, okay, meaning you are somebody who supports the government of Israel, the state of Israel, and their project, which has resulted in the ethnic cleansing of Palestinians from this region, okay? That is what Zionism is. It is a settler colonial project. That is not my opinion. That is the opinion of the founders of the state of Israel, of the original Zionists, okay? Guys like Herzl, right? You can go and read some of their previous statements throughout history when, before Israel even existed on the face of the map, okay, before 1948 and the Nakba that expelled over 700,000 Palestinians from their land. You can go and read their early statements, okay? A lot of these early Zionists were self-admittedly saying that this was a settler colonial project, that the Palestinians who lived in this area were the native people to this area. Now, Palestinian people living in this area, they could be Muslim, they could be Christian, they could be Jewish, they could be any number of different things, right? And so what Zionism is the establishment of an exclusionary Jewish state, okay? It is an ethno-state project that has required an ethnic cleansing and a genocide of the Palestinian people. That is what that is. Zionism is not Judaism, okay? It's not the Jewish religion. It's not an ethnicity, okay? It is a settler colonial project that has taken place over the last 100 years or so, okay? That is what that is. And so to conflate anti-Zionism or criticism of the government of Israel with anti-Semitism, which is what many U.S. politicians have done, which is what every single Israeli representative that I've seen has done, since October 7th especially, it's been ramped up into oblivion. But to conflate those two things is to basically give the same idea as saying, to criticize the government of Saudi Arabia for being an authoritarian theocratic dictatorship, okay, that commits human rights abuses, that commits war crimes, that is Islamophobic. That is how stupid this kind of a resolution is. Now keep in mind, it was just a couple months ago, before all of this October 7th shit happened, okay, and Israel's response to that inside of Gaza since then. It was just a couple months ago I was covering a different bill that was passed through the House of Representatives, that the entire point of the bill was to literally just say, Israel is not racist. Israel is not an apartheid. So just like entirely contradicting reality of what is happening on the ground to the Palestinian people, okay? Whether you live inside of Israeli territory, whether you live in the West Bank, whether you live in Gaza, it is to outright deny the reality that the UN has talked about, that human rights organizations, including some that are based within Israel itself, like B'Tselem, but Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International and the rest of these major respected human rights organizations, all of them have come out and said, yes, it's an apartheid. Of course it is, by any stretch of the imagination. And some people even make the argument, I think in a good faith way, and with the backing of evidence, that it is an even more aggressive and violent apartheid than even what was taking place in South Africa, okay, which is where we get the original major use of the term apartheid in the first place. So, to pass a resolution like this, the intention of this is absolutely nothing other than to try to silence people, to try to intimidate people who want to criticize the government of Israel, because they are going to be scared that, number one, they're going to be called anti-Semitic, and that they're going to be, people are going to say, oh, you must hate all of the Jewish people, even though, again, I've been to these protests that are calling for a ceasefire. You know who's leading those fucking protests? It's Jewish Voices for Peace. It's If Not Now, another Jewish organization calling for a ceasefire right now. They're trying to, number one, again, intimidate people, lawmakers, protesters, college students, whatever the case may be, into silence, to not criticize the government of Israel. But number two, for lawmakers specifically, it's to try to get a list of people who vote against this kind of a resolution, who then groups like AIPAC or J Street or whatever the case may be, can then spend millions of dollars trying to toss them out of their seats, because that's how our government is funded, right? Now, I have the same exact criticism, not just for groups like AIPAC, but for any lobbying group in the United States of America. I don't think, believe it or not, that our elections should be determined based on what wealthy individuals or organizations want to happen, right? I think it should be the will of the people. I think we should have publicly funded elections. We should get dark money. We should get, big corporate money and billionaire money out of our politics entirely. So this isn't just about Israel, but I do think that it's fucking insane and deranged that we live in a country that pretends to be a democracy, where a group like AIPAC, that just a couple weeks ago was literally meeting with Benjamin Netanyahu and his cabinet, okay, a group that exists solely to perpetuate the interests of a foreign government, that they can come in to the United States and spend money to remove members of Congress who are critical of that foreign government. That is not a democracy, okay? It is pure rank corruption. That is what that is. And that is the purpose of this kind of a piece of legislation, right? At the same time, they're still trying in the House of Representatives to pass billions of dollars in additional aid on top of the other billions of dollars that we already give to Israel in weapons, okay? Weapons that are being used against innocent Palestinian men, women, and children in Gaza right now, and in the West Bank for that matter. Okay, so here's the actual roll call. 14 no votes. 14. Out of a House of Representatives that has 435 members. Now without George Santos, actually, because he was expelled. I guess now it's 434 members. 14 no votes. 92, again, took the coward's way out and voted present, because I guess they were scared of being called anti-Semitic or something. I mean, I didn't, give a very thorough, in-depth look through this, but some of the names that stood out to me, right? Mark Pocan, that's fucking embarrassing, right? Jerry Nadler, even somebody who we just read in the article was having a criticism of this bill. He still voted present. He didn't even vote against this, right? Not voting, 17. But the overwhelming majority here, the yes, is 311. 311 people voted. Okay, and we can look at the text of this bill, right? Because maybe this gives you an interpretation in terms of how this was poisoned intentionally, right? So you can go through number 1, 2, and 3. Resolved that the House of U.S. Representatives, number 1, strongly condemns and denounces all instances of anti-Semitism occurring in the United States and globally. Okay, that in and of itself, by the text of the bill, that's totally fine. Yes, of course, we condemn instances of anti-Semitism. The problem here is that the government of Israel, and many U.S. politicians, Democrats and Republicans alike, want you to believe that criticism of the government of Israel is anti-Semitism, right? That all of these protests calling for a ceasefire, that's anti-Semitism. You must want Hamas to genocide all of the Jewish people around the world. That's the issue here, right? But just on face value, right? Number 1, that's totally fine. Number 2, reaffirms and reiterates its strong support for the Jewish community at home and abroad. That's totally fine. Number 3, calls on elected officials and world leaders to condemn and fight all forms of domestic and global anti-Semitism. At face value, all of those things are fine. Then you get to number 4, clearly and firmly states that anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. That's where you lost me, okay? And I think that any respectable member of Congress would not have voted for this bill, regardless of how much the rest of this is trying to, if you vote against this, you're going to be painted as an anti-Semite. No, this is a poison pill right here. Clearly and firmly states anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. I mean, again, would these people vote for a bill that says, if you criticize the government of Iran, okay, then you must want to genocide all Muslim people, right? You must be rabidly, Islamophobic. I mean, it's so absurd. Again, so I want to give some credit here to the no votes here. We had Bowman, Bush, Connolly, Garcia, Grivalia or Grijalva, Jayapal, Lee, Massey, Ocasio-Cortez, Omar, Presley, Ramirez, Tlaib, Watson, Coleman. So those are the ones who had the stones to actually stand up against this entirely absurd and unnecessary and ridiculous piece of legislation here. As Israel is continuing to slaughter innocent men, women, and children by the thousands with our weapons, with our taxpayer dollars, in our name, with our diplomatic cover. Okay? This is what our Congress decides to do, right? Not interested in protecting the lives of innocent Palestinian, civilians, right? And keep in mind, we already have laws on the book that are simply not being applied to the government of Israel, like the Leahy Act. Okay, go and Google the Leahy Act if you want to get more information on it. It essentially states that the U.S. government is not legally allowed to give weapons to countries that are wantonly violating international law, that are committing war crimes with those weapons. We just decide not to apply that law to the government of Israel, or in other instances, like to the government of Saudi Arabia, for example, right? And their genocidal bombing of Yemen, okay? We just decide not to apply these laws, right? And so this is our government for you. Not only are they not deciding to apply some of the laws and standards that have already been put on the books, but they're unleashing U.S. weaponry to the contrary of those laws. I just read you guys a report a couple of days ago. The Biden administration going out of their way to remove restrictions on the amount of weapons that we can supply to Israel, right? So this is what our government is. They're not talking about healthcare. They're not talking about educational opportunity for the American people. They're not talking about wages. They're not talking about big pharma or cracking down on corporate America or anything like that. They are deciding to basically pass a bill that says if you criticize what, we consider to be a geopolitical asset in the Middle East, okay, so we can maintain our dominance and project power in this region, if you criticize that, then you must hate all Jewish people. I mean, just completely disgusting and absurd. And shame on every single member of Congress who voted for this bill and who even voted present, because I think, again, that's a pretty fucking cowardly thing to do.
Everyone is saying good politic guy has the best politic. Believe me, no one does it like him. Believe me, everyone is saying